Hey there everybody, and welcome to Legit Economics, where today we're going to be talking about the economics of the coronavirus, the bailout edition. So what are bailouts? Well, bailouts are cash payments, grants, small business loans, a whole wide array of tools and measures that governments use in order to save businesses from bankruptcy. So what are the economic effects of all these things? Well, they're twofold. The first effect is that they generally cause moral hazard. And moral hazard is a term in economics that we use, which means that you're able to take risks with other people's money. Now, thinking about that for a second, you may soon find out why that is problematic. If I'm going to ruin a car, right? Let's say I just really want a car to explode. I'm a pyromaniac, and so I'm going to light it on fire. I'm going to do the whole Breaking Bad thing. What would be better? Using my own car that I paid for, or renting a car and then getting it insured? Well, obviously, renting it and getting it insured. And that's the moral hazard, because you are able to now engage in destructive behavior with another person's assets. In the last financial crisis, we had major moral hazard because you had a lot of companies that were going bankrupt because, of course, they hadn't kept enough savings, they had engaged in irresponsible business practices, and so what did the government do? Well, they bailed them out. AIG, Chrysler, etc. Let's talk about what has happened since 2008, because, oh, the businesses were saved, how wonderful. Well, what we've had as a result are record amounts of stock buybacks. So now that companies have been making money in this past expansion for the past 10, 12 years, instead of being responsible and putting a lot of that money into rainy day funds and preparing for any potential downturn, which they always happen, it's not like this is a secret. Recessions come up regularly in the economy, and the reasons for that we'll talk about in another video. But everyone knows they're going to come sooner or later. And so why aren't businesses saving? I mean, isn't that a little bit illogical? After all, if you know there's a recession every so many years, wouldn't you keep enough savings to get through it? Well, no, especially not since 2008. Why? Because businesses know that the government is going to bail them out. And that's the moral hazard. The taxpayers are going to bail out the businesses, so the business executives, they think, well, why do I have to save? After all, the taxpayer is going to bail me out. And that's why we've had these record buybacks. In the airline industry, for example, $45 billion have been spent in stock buybacks in the past 8 years in the airline industry alone. Just the airlines. There have been hundreds of billions of stock buybacks throughout all of these companies. And stock buybacks, why do they do it? Well, of course, to bolster their pay. A lot of these executives, they get paid in stock. That's their payment. And so why is Jeff Bezos, for example, worth $100+ billion? It's not because he has $100 billion in the bank. He has the vast majority of that wealth is in stock, Amazon stock. So if Amazon stock keeps going up, his net worth goes up. And this is no different from the top 1%. The vast majority of the top 0.1%, that's how they get their pay, stock. And so if they can artificially inflate the price of stock, well, then they can artificially inflate their incomes. Okay? Now, nobody would dare do this in a pure free market. If businesses knew that the government, i.e. the taxpayer, you and me, if they knew that they were never going to get bailed out, they would keep rainy day funds. Because they would know that a crisis sooner or later is going to come. So to those who are saying, well, this coronavirus, we have to save these businesses because the coronavirus is an unpredictable event, a once-in-a-lifetime event. Well, yes, that is true, but economic disasters are not once-in-a-lifetime events. They're regular. They're regular. It can be a war, it can be a pandemic, it can be a hurricane, it can just be a bank failure like happened in 2008. So the excuse that you couldn't have foreseen the coronavirus, okay, that's true, but it's irrelevant. Economic crises always appear regularly. And so what should happen? Well, these companies should go out of business. When a business goes into bankruptcy, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of their assets are going to be liquidated and they're going to cease to exist. In fact, most of the time what that means is the business is going to restructure. So remember that businesses that generate a profit, that's because society is telling them, is letting them know through their actions to buy, they're letting the business know that you are adding value to our lives. Losses, of course, mean the opposite. Losses are meaning that companies are wasting society's limited resources. Society would rather use land, labor, and capital in other parts of the economy more urgently. So what bankruptcy does is it takes losing companies and forces them to restructure so that they can become profitable. And that may mean selling off some of their assets, it may mean laying off some workers, but that's what needs to be done. In a pure free market economy, there is no unemployment in the long term, because labor is being freed up. When they're laid off, yes, it hurts for the individual person, but ultimately, it's better for the person and the economy, the person and the consumer, because now that labor is going to be freed up to go to other industries that are more productive. So the laborer at the end of the day will be able to use his labor more effectively. Whereas what's happening right now, when these companies are bailed out, workers that their talents and abilities are being wasted in many companies by losing money, they could be freed up to go to other companies and be more productive and have more valuable lives. But we're prohibiting that from happening. And by the way, the same thing that applies to companies applies to individuals. 50, 100 years ago, when Americans were much poorer, we have a much higher standard of living than Americans 50 or 100 years ago. But 50 and 100 years ago, Americans had savings. It was normal for the average American worker to have 6 to 12 months of salary saved in the bank account for any eventuality. That was normal. Now that's an oddity. How many people do you know that have a year's worth of salary saved up in the bank? Why are individuals doing that? Well, because, again, moral hazard. They have unemployment benefits. They have now these UBI payments. And so all of this is incentivizing the same reckless behavior in individuals and in companies. So after this whole crisis has gone away, do you think companies are going to save more or less? Well, they're going to save less, obviously. Companies are absolutely going to save less, because now they know. If they didn't know from 2008, well, now they definitely know that if they are in trouble, the taxpayer is going to bail them out. So you're going to see even more reckless behavior in the years to come. I guarantee it. And what this does is it leads to the second effect of bailout, which is zombification. Zombification of economies and businesses. And what is zombification? Well, as it might imply, it's when businesses become stagnant. They stop being profitable. Economies stop being profitable. They stop growing. Japan, for example, they're a zombified economy because of all the bailouts they have done for their businesses over the decades. For the past 40 years, they've been at essentially zero GDP growth. They're a zombified economy. Because it goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier. When you save these losing businesses, and again, why are they losing? Because the consumer, you and I, and all the other billions of us, we are voting with our dollars. And when we purchase or abstain from a purchase, we are influencing the price. And we are influencing where resources of society are allocated. So a losing company means that the consumers in society don't value their services. The workers that would be working for losing company A, their labor is being wasted. And their labor would be much better used in company B, profitable company B. So WeWork, a company that was at one time worth $47 billion, now it's worth less than $5 billion because they're a losing company. They never made a profit ever. So if you want to look it up, look them up. That means that there are thousands of employees, their labor is being wasted at WeWork. When other companies, maybe Apple, maybe McDonald's, maybe Walmart, other profitable companies, they need that labor more. And when they get that labor, that makes these winning companies more profitable. And what more profitable means is that they are able to produce a better product at a better price for the consumer. So when bailouts are made and you zombify the economy, that entire process of reallocation is stopped. It's prohibited. And it keeps those losing companies and business weighing down the economy, using up assets and resources that are more or urgently needed elsewhere, as determined by the sovereign consumer. And so bailouts are disastrous. This bailout that is going on is disastrous. It's absolutely disastrous. This will zombify our economy. It already has. Since 2008, we've had very low growth. Why is that? A large part of it is because of all the bailouts that zombified so many companies. Well, now that zombification is going to be even worse. So say goodbye to the days of, the days of 1960s, 70s, and 80s of 5% GDP growth. Those days are gone. Unless the economy can be allowed to truly restructure, unless companies are allowed to go into bankruptcy and either liquidate or restructure so that resources can be efficiently allocated. And until that time comes, we will be stuck in perpetual low growth for decades to come. And those are the economic effects of bailouts. I hope you enjoyed this video. If I missed anything, or if you want to comment on something below, comment. And hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're coming out with these videos on a range of economic topics, some philosophy, some law, it all ties in. So hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell so that you know when our video comes out so you can watch it.